History is not a complete record of the past. It is a selection. What survives is shaped by power, by who controlled institutions, education, and record-keeping. Empires preserved what served order, authority, and continuity. What challenged those structures was often excluded, neglected, or allowed to disappear. Across civilizations, scholars contributed to mathematics, medicine, philosophy, and astronomy without expecting recognition. But recognition was never neutral. Names were recorded by those who decided what knowledge mattered. When institutions collapsed, when priorities shifted, or when ideas became inconvenient, entire intellectual traditions faded from official memory. This process did not require deliberate destruction. Silence was often enough. Manuscripts were not copied. Teachings were absorbed without attribution. Contributions survived, but names did not. Women scholars were especially vulnerable to this process, not because they lacked influence, but because influence did not guarantee preservation. Education could exist without acknowledgement. Ideas could circulate without authorship. To understand how this happened, we must first accept an uncomfortable truth. History does not forget randomly. It remembers selectively. And that selection shaped what we now believe about the past. In the late 4th and early 5th century, Alexandria remained one of the most important intellectual centers of the Mediterranean world. Among its scholars was Hypatia, a mathematician, astronomer, and philosopher whose reputation extended far beyond the city itself. Hypatia taught publicly. She wrote commentaries on classical works, refined mathematical methods, and preserved astronomical knowledge at a time when learning depended entirely on transmission. Her students included pagans, Christians, and civic leaders, evidence that her authority was intellectual, not ideological. Yet Hypatia lived during a period of political and religious instability. Alexandria was divided between competing authorities, and knowledge increasingly became associated with power. Independent thinkers, especially those who did not belong clearly to one institution, became vulnerable. Hypatia's death was violent, but the more lasting damage came afterward. Her writings were not systematically preserved. Her teachings survived indirectly, absorbed into later traditions without attribution. What remained was her reputation and fragments recorded by others. Hypatia's disappearance from the historical record was not the result of irrelevance. It was the result of a world where intellectual independence had become dangerous, and preservation depended on institutional protection. Hypatia was not alone. Across civilizations, women contributed to knowledge in ways that were later minimized, absorbed, or forgotten. The pattern appears wherever education existed without stable institutional protection. In ancient China, Banzhou wrote foundational works on history and philosophy. Her scholarship shaped imperial education, yet her authority was often framed as supplementary rather than central. In ancient India, Gargi Vachaknavi debated metaphysics in royal assemblies. Her arguments survived in philosophical texts, but little is known about her life beyond brief references. In medieval Europe, Hildegard of Bingen produced original work in medicine, theology, and natural science. Her survival in the historical record depended almost entirely on religious institutions that preserved her writings. These women were not erased by ignorance. They were remembered selectively. Their ideas endured because they were useful. Their identities faded because institutions did not prioritize preservation. The loss was not simply personal. It shaped what later generations believed about who produced knowledge and who did not. When knowledge disappears, it is rarely sudden. It fades through neglect, through silence, through decisions about what is worth preserving. The stories of Hypatia, Nalanda, and countless unnamed scholars remind us that learning does not vanish on its own. It survives or disappears depending on institutions, priorities, and power. History is not only a record of discovery, it is a record of preservation. What we know today reflects not just who created knowledge, but who was allowed to protect it. This does not mean the past was uniquely fragile. Every era decides which voices will endure. The question is not whether knowledge will be lost, but whose knowledge we choose to remember. To study history carefully is not to assign blame. It is to understand responsibility. And in doing so, we begin to see what still remains and what can still be recovered.